Adolf Hitler never hid the fact that he saw the Soviet Union as his regime's ultimate enemy. He despised communism and viewed the vast lands and abundant resources of Soviet Russia as the prize that would finally allow the German people to become the master race. In the early months of 1941, while staying at his mountain retreat, the Berghof in Bavaria, Hitler finalized plans for his most audacious gamble yet, Operation Barbarossa, the full-scale invasion of the Soviet Union. Quietly, German forces were moved east and re-equipped for what would be the greatest military challenge in German history. Officially, Germany and the Soviet Union were still allies, and Stalin was doing everything in his power to preserve that illusion. The Soviet Union, despite its size, was in no condition for war. The once mighty Red Army had been gutted by Stalin's purges in the late 1932, with nearly three-quarters of its senior officers either executed or imprisoned. The result was a catastrophic collapse in morale and military leadership. As German troops massed in neighboring Poland, Stalin instructed his forces not to provoke Hitler in any way. But before turning east, Hitler needed to secure his southern flank. Romania, Bulgaria, and Hungary were loyal allies, but Yugoslavia posed a problem. In March 1941, its pro-German government was overthrown in a British-backed coup. Greece was also aligned with Britain, so on April 6, 1941, Germany invaded the Balkans. 33 German divisions stormed into Yugoslavia, and within days, the capital, Belgrade, surrendered. Greece fell soon after. Despite British assistance, Athens was captured in less than 3 weeks. Now, the path to Russia lay wide open. On June 22, 1941, at 3:15 a.m., Operation Barbarossa began. The Luftwaffe launched a dawn assault on Soviet airfields, and the ground invasion followed. German troops crossed the Bug River and surged into Soviet territory. Within 2 days, German panzers had advanced more than 50 miles. Soviet counterattacks, poorly coordinated and ill-prepared, were swept aside. Tens of thousands of Red Army soldiers were captured. The Luftwaffe dominated the skies, and Soviet command seemed paralyzed by the sudden onslaught. On June 29th, German panzer units converged near Minsk, encircling massive numbers of Soviet troops. More than 300,000 prisoners were taken. In parts of Ukraine, German forces were even welcomed as liberators due to deep-rooted anti-Russian sentiment. In Moscow, Stalin was in shock, retreating into silence for more than a week before finally, on July 3rd, appealing to the patriotism of the Soviet people to defend the motherland. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, meanwhile, saw opportunity. No longer was Britain alone. He declared that any enemy of Nazi Germany was a friend of Britain, regardless of past political differences, and sent a delegation to Moscow to sign a treaty of mutual assistance. As June turned to July, German forces pushed deeper into Soviet territory. Near Minsk, 300,000 Soviet troops had already been encircled. General Heinz Guderian's panzers raced ahead, reaching Smolensk, only 200 miles from Moscow. By July 22nd, another 310,000 Red Army troops were trapped. German tanks had moved fast, but the bulk of the army still relied on horses and foot marches, which caused delays. Still, within 5 days, the infantry caught up and cleared the area. The number of Soviet prisoners swelled into the millions. Moscow was now within reach. Yet Hitler made a crucial decision. Instead of pushing toward the capital, he ordered Guderian to swing south and assist in the battle for Kiev. Guderian protested, but Hitler insisted. That delay would prove costly. Despite early victories, signs emerged that the Red Army was no pushover. Soviet manpower seemed limitless. Over 16 million soldiers had now been mobilized. They also introduced a powerful new tank, the T-34, which outclassed the German Panzer IV in mobility and firepower. On August 23, Guderian began his push south. 3 weeks later, Army Group South attacked northward. On September 16, the pincers met east of Kiev, crushing 2 Soviet armies. 500,000 Soviet troops were killed or captured. On the same day, German forces surrounded Leningrad. Rather than assault the city directly, Hitler chose to starve it into submission. Conditions inside Leningrad became horrific. The only supply route was across Lake Ladoga, and in November, 11,000 civilians died of starvation. Even after an ice road opened in December, 3,700 died in a single day. Meanwhile, Army Group Center resumed preparations for the Moscow assault. Guderian rejoined and prepared to lead the renewed offensive. On September 20, the attack began. German forces had a 2-to-1 advantage in tanks and troops, and 3-to-1 in aircraft. By October 7, another large Soviet encirclement was completed. Stalin appointed Marshal Zhukov to organize the city's defense. Citizens dug trenches, but the real obstacle to Germany's advance would be nature itself. On October 8, heavy rains turned roads into mud. Vehicles bogged down, and momentum slowed. By late October, stiff Soviet resistance and horrific weather had stalled the Germans. 50 miles from Moscow, Hitler's earlier diversion to Kiev now cost him dearly. Army Group South reached the Black Sea, capturing more Soviet troops, but weather remained a constant enemy. Even so, Kharkov fell on October 24th. Winter began to set in, and German troops expecting victory by summer were caught unprepared. On December 4th, forward units came within 19 miles of Red Square. Some claimed to see the domes of the Kremlin glinting in the distance, but the bitter cold took hold. Engines wouldn't start, weapons froze, soldiers succumbed to frostbite. On December 5, the attack halted. That same day, Stalin struck back. Confident Japan would not attack from the east, he transferred 30 divisions from Siberia. These were well equipped and trained for winter warfare. By early December, 500,000 fresh Soviet troops stood ready near Moscow. On December 5, the Soviets launched a fierce counterattack. Artillery battered German positions, and waves of T-34s broke through. Caught off guard, the Germans fell back. For a week, Soviet forces drove the Germans into retreat. Hitler dismissed Field Marshal von Brauchitsch and assumed command himself. Guderian and 35 other officers were also dismissed. Hitler declared there would be no more retreats. German lines gradually stabilized, but Stalin pushed for a massive counteroffensive. Marshal Zhukov urged caution, but Stalin pressed ahead. For 4 months, fighting raged inconclusively along the front. Hitler, once used to swift victories, now found himself bogged down in a bitter war against a tenacious enemy. Then came another blow. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked the United States. Hitler responded by declaring war on America without strategy or preparation, adding, another powerful foe to Germany's enemies. As 1942 began, Hitler still hoped for victory in the East. He shifted focus to the South. Germany's oil reserves were dwindling. Operation Blue was launched. Army Group A would push toward the Caucasus and seize Soviet oil fields. Army Group B would guard its flank along the Don River. German troops met heavy Soviet resistance near Kharkov. Another 200,000 Soviet troops were captured. In the Crimea, the siege of Sevastopol continued. After 8 months of relentless artillery bombardment, including a 400mm railway gun, the port finally fell in June 1942. On June 28, the new southern offensive began. Army Group B advanced along the Don. Army Group A reached near Rostov by July 9. But then, Hitler made another error. He ordered Army Group B to divert and take Stalingrad A. symbolic target with little strategic value. This new goal slowed everything. Frustrated with the Caucasus advance, Hitler moved panzers south, weakening the Stalingrad drive. Then he changed his mind again and diverted them back north. On August 9th, Army Group A captured the Makop oil fields, only to find them destroyed beyond use.